Now with one more inhale and exhale, even though we can't hear each other, we'll feel each other. Join your hands in front of your heart center and we'll begin with one Om. Inhaling again. And then when you're ready, open your eyes. Okay, so I want to just give a brief little summary for those, a couple of you are a little bit newer to the Bhagavad Gita. And so I won't go into the whole story again, but I just want to summarize and try to make a summary statement that the Bhagavad Gita is a short little 18-verse text that's in a bigger body of work that's considered like the Odyssey and the Iliad and the Odyssey. So it comes from this greater work. And by the time we get to the Bhagavad Gita, the story unfolds and we land here in this time frame that a war and a battle will take place. And you can think about it as fact, or you can think about it as a metaphor and an allegory and filled with a lot of symbolism. And we're on a battlefield with Arjuna, who has been groomed to be the greatest warrior and archer of all time. And he stands for his family. And then Krishna, who is his charioteer, and Krishna could be considered our higher self and our heart, and Arjuna could be considered our personality and our ego. So if you're looking at it from a more symbolic way, we're looking at it from that. And so we're on this battlefield, and you also can think about the battlefield as the battlefield within. But there's these two families and their cousins and their aunts and their uncles and their teachers, and their two families that now are at war. And as the Gita takes place, Arjuna, who is leading his family, who's considered the good cousins, and then there's the bad cousin. So Arjuna is there with Krishna, the charioteer, and Arjuna asks Krishna to drive him up to the middle of the battlefield where he sees both sides, his family and his cousin, and who he has to fight in that family. And Arjuna is just taken aback when he realized the implications of what's going to happen, that he's going to have to fight his family and probably kill them, and in order for the good cousins to live. And so he literally has a breakdown. He trembles, his hair stands on end, and he has a meltdown in the middle of the battlefield. And so Krishna then, who is Arjuna's cousin, he's his charioteer, he's his brother-in-law. And little by little through the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reveals to Arjuna that he is also God. He is an avatar. He's divine, and he has taken human form because the world needs him right now. But Arjuna doesn't really know that. So part of the mystery of the story and the unfolding of the story is that Krishna little by little reveals to Arjuna who he really is. And that's rather important in the story as well. So he has a meltdown, and one of the greatest teachings, and I'll start to talk about the first 6 chapters, because the Gita is there's 3 sort of sections, the first 6, the second, and then the third. I'm going to see if I could turn her video off. Let me see. I did. Okay, that'd be a little less distracting. So what where we're at right now is that Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have to get up and do your dharma. You have to get up and take a stand for yoga, a stand in yoga. And he uses the word stand several times. And what that means is that you literally have to stand in yoga yourself. If we're looking at this as a metaphor and a mirror for our own lives, then the teaching is telling us that we have to take a stand for yoga. And yoga is all of it. It's not just asana, as I'm known to say over and over and over again. If you've taken my classes, it's everything. It's how we engage life. That is yoga. The choices we make on every level is yoga. So Krishna is just, he starts out not so assertive, but then he gets more assertive with Arjuna, and he basically is telling him, I think even from one of my teachers, the Sanskrit words that are translated is Krishna tells Arjuna, stop being like a eunuch. So he literally like slaps him down and says, you know, you're really being a chicken here. You have to get up and do your dharma. And his dharma is to be a warrior. He was groomed for this. And each of us is groomed for something. So let me go here. Okay. And so he's telling Arjuna, this is what you've been groomed for. You can't chicken out on us now. And so then he starts to unfold a little bit more. And he starts to explain the first 6 chapters really talk about karma yoga, and he introduces jnana yoga as well, which is knowledge. But first, Krishna starts to talk about karma yoga, and karma yoga is the yoga of action. And so he's really saying you need to take action. And that he also talks about that we are influenced. He starts to explain karma yoga, that we are influenced by sort of metaphysics, that we're influenced by metaphysics, and that there's a methodology really to action, that it isn't just what we do that doesn't affect. What we do affects ourselves, our community, you know, our loved ones, our community, and on, which of course, if you're on this call, you know that, you know, but that's what he starts to explain, that it's more than just us, that nature is involved, and there's a cosmology involved, and that we are affected by nature. And in these chapters, Krishna starts to reveal the gunas, which are qualities of nature. So the qualities are sattva, which means equilibrium, equanimity. Sometimes it's translated as light. In traditional classical yoga, sattva, or the light, often is translated as the highest quality. But from a tantric perspective, all of the qualities of the gunas are equally important. What we have to learn, what our karma yoga is, which one of the qualities do we want and need to engage more of at a particular time experience in our life. So there's the quality of light and equanimity. There's the quality of inertia, darkness, that's sort of like more a little bit like of inaction. And then there's the quality, rajasic quality, which has a quality of fire and really action. And so they influence us. And as personalities and tendencies, some of those qualities are a little bit more predominant in each of us, and depending on our life circumstances as well, and what we're trying to do. So right now, I would say that many of us might be feeling a little bit more of that tamasic energy. We have been forced to slow down in some ways. Choices have been taken away. We can't just freely go out and about. We have to really think about where we're going, how we're going, the social distancing. So you might even start to feel that. You might feel a little bit of a heavier energy, and that's actually appropriate. That's not a bad thing, because it helps us stay a little bit more grounded. So it just is something you might start to think about. And in with this karma yoga, he's also talking about that there's something called provenance. In the way he means it in this way, the way Christian means provenance, it means authority, it means our history, it means our past. So generational, ancestral, cultural, all of those things make up part of karma action. I mean, we talk about this in a more psychological way, contemporary psychological way, that we are impacted by our family of origin, we're impacted by our ancestry. We know that. And even back then, Krishna is telling Arjuna that those factors implicate us. They implicate us, and they influence our actions in the way we do yoga, the way we do life. And so he's telling Krishna is telling Arjuna, dude, you have to look at all this. Your ancestral line, your impact, where you've come from and who you are, your dharma then, your purpose is to be a warrior. And so in these chapters, he's telling Arjuna as well that that it's better to do your dharma imperfectly than to do another's perfectly. And what he means by that is what we talk about in contemporary world today, is that authentic self. That in order to be our authentic self, we have to be doing our dharma. And that's what he's telling Arjuna, that do your dharma, and that is authentically who you are. And then Arjuna is still like, well, he's still really in an anguished place, because he said, but then I have to kill I might be doing my dharma, but then what if I kill my cousin? What if I kill my brother, my family? And Krishna is telling him a little bit flippantly, from my impression, the way the text reads, it's sort of like, don't worry about that, because we're so much more than our body, and everybody's going to end up in the same place anyway. So you just have to do what you're here to do. And that these bodies, I think the point of it is, though, that these bodies are temporary. They're just our vehicles to live this life. And in order to really live this life with meaning and purpose, is to live it from an authentic self and do what you're here to do. And so he touches a little bit on reincarnation in that way. And he's also telling us, when he talks about provenance, he's talking about a legacy, which is what I'm all about right now as well. It's like, we have to break away from the constraints of what can be controlled. Not really controlled is not the word I want to say, but we have the opportunity to look at how we've been imprinted. You know, what is serving us? What are the cultural DNA sort of imprinting that we have that no longer serves who we are? And in a global way now, we're looking at that globally. Well, we have to be looking at it globally. What our actions, what karma yoga, how we have, the actions we have taken have got us to this place. And it's not really such a great place right now. However, there are blessings that can happen here. Excuse me, I might sneeze. Geez, let me take a sip. I was out in the wildflowers again today, and my allergies are all spinning. So what he's saying is that look at how we're being influenced, look at provenance, look at legacy, and then look at how best you could live your legacy, how you can live your dharma. And the biggest thing is for him to stand for yoga. And so one of the other things that he says is, we have to be entirely our own person and take on whatever that is for us. And I think one of the teachings that gets misrepresented, and I've been teaching this class on Tuesday morning as well, but when we talked about don't be attached to the fruits of your labor. And we started to unpack that on Tuesday, but what I really realized too that I want to come back to is that Krishna introduces this idea of not being attached to the fruits of our labor, but there's other parts to that. What he's saying too is there's features of action. So karma yoga is action, and we're karma yogis because we are human beings and we are active and we do actions. And so Krishna's not saying don't pay attention to the outcome. He's saying actually we absolutely have to pay attention to the outcome, because look at where we are now. So we have to look at the choices we make when we act. And the three features are then, so before we act, we have choice. Sometimes it's like so quick, spur of the moment, but there is in the mind, in manas, there is this like pre-thought. So there's this pre-thought and then a thought, and then we either speak or we act, and we do an action. And Krishna is saying, before you speak and before you do anything, you have to think about it. What are the implications? So if I say this, if I do this, what will be the implications? How will it affect everybody else? So that's really important. That's sort of the before the action. And then the second feature of it is that when you're in the action, you have to be really present. Like really be aware of what you're doing, and really ask yourself the question, why am I doing it? You know, what is this? What's the why and what's the how? Like, how am I going to do it? And then why am I going to do it? So you kind of sync those up. And then when you create the piece of art, or I've been following you, Brody, and I have watched your unfoldment with your cooking and your vegan, and I look at your meals and I'm like, oh my God, that looks so delicious. You know, you've been on this journey of health and looking at your foods. And so you're nourishing your body. And so you've thought about it. You made a choice to change some eating habits and how you lived your life. And then you just have to let it go. Like, now I'm a vegan and I'm going to enjoy my food and I'm hoping I'm nourishing my body, and then I can't be obsessed about it, right? I just have to kind of let that go. So that's a simple little way to look at it. But even in the bigger things, and I'll use myself, I mentioned this before, when I thought about putting this class on, I thought, what's my motivation? Like, why do I want to do this? And, you know, the thought arose like, oh, gee, I should do this. And then I'm like, well, why should I do it? What's my motivation? What is it? And what I came to feel inside myself, was to keep us connected, to see how ancient teachings can really be foundational for these troubling times, that we can look at the past. And that's another feature of karma action, is to look at the past so it informs our present and the choices we make today, because the choices we make today will influence our future. We all know this. And how blessed are we, whether we are yogis on the mat or yogis in the way we live our life, how blessed are we that we are yogis, that we have an awareness of that the choices we're making today. And I was speaking to another friend and we were talking about, this is a great opportunity, because how we handle sheltering in, how we handle what's happening here, is how we're going to handle life after. And someone asked me, another friend of mine asked me, how are we ever going to get back to normal? And my response was, Lord, I hope we don't ever get back to normal, because normal got us here, right? We have to do things differently. And that's what Krishna is actually asking of us, is to look at the past, stand up and do yoga, stand up and do your dharma. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the past that you came from look at those mistakes. Look at how they implicated and imprinted people and what the results of those actions were. So we could avoid some of this. And what he's really asking us to do is to have a deeper sense of awareness and make more skillful choices, to be more skillful in our choice making. Now, we can do the best we can and do it imperfectly because we are imperfect human beings, and something might not happen the way we really want it to, or the intention was pure in our heart and it doesn't really go the way we want. That's going to happen. But what Krishna is asking us is what he's telling Arjuna. Arjuna says, well, how do I do that? And Krishna says, practice. That's why we're called practicing yogis. He says, practice, 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 over and over again. You just have to keep practicing. And then and what's interesting about these chapters is that Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna how to do it. And I mentioned this the other day, like I recently had my Vedic astrology chart done, and I like to, a couple of years ago, I had my tea leaves read, and I like stuff like that. I think it's interesting. I think it's another tool. I think it's fun. And sometimes I just want them to tell me what to do. Like, okay, this is up in my life, and could you just like tell me what to do? Well, no one can tell you what to do, right? And that's with Krishna. He's like, I can't tell you what to do. I want to give you strategies so you can practice and figure out the best thing for you. And you have to figure out how to do it. So I think that's really cool and kind of interesting. It's on you, he says to Arjuna, it's on you. I'll teach you, but it's on you. And that's cause and effect then too. That's karma yoga. Karma yoga is cause and effect. And so he's telling Arjuna that he's inherently free to choose. That even though he believes that he should do his dharma, that it's necessary for him to do his dharma, that if he doesn't do his dharma, he has to look at that, because he also brings in this idea that inaction is a choice. Inaction is also action. But he wants Arjuna, and he's telling us, fine, it's okay not to act on something, but ask the question why. Why are you not acting on something? Do you have an understanding of that? Is it fear? Is it the ego? And all of this, he's asking us to sync it up with our heart and say, why are you acting? Who's leading the show? Your ego? Or is the ego in alignment with the personality, with the heart? Is the personality and the heart in alignment? And that's what Arjuna is asking us to do, to think about that. And so then he introduces this idea of, and Arjuna says, well, how do I do that? And Krishna said, you get to choose. I can't force you to do it. Ultimately, it's still your choice. And Arjuna says, well, how do I figure it out? And Krishna says, through knowledge. And that's when he introduces jnana yoga, the knowledge, the yoga of wisdom and knowledge. And he makes a big point on how important this is. And so Krishna asks, well, if it's so important, if knowledge is so important, then why do I have to act? Why should I act? Maybe I don't need to do anything. I could just like try to figure things out in my head and go about it a different way. And Krishna says they're intertwined. And this again is that knowledge informs our action. If we're on the path of jnana yoga and we study the Bhagavad Gita and we stand in yoga and we develop higher perspectives and expansive perspectives, and we're gaining knowledge and wisdom, that will influence the choices we make in our actions. That will influence karma yoga. And so they go together. He says you can't really separate them out so much. So that's really important too. And then again, he talks about the gunas, how the qualities of nature also, if we're aware of the qualities of nature, that's part of the knowledge. That's part of jnana yoga. If we're aware of this more inert quality, this more fiery quality, this more equanimity, sort of even still quality, then we can use them to serve us better than to just be affected by them. We can actually engage them. So he explains that, and that he wants us to participate them, not try to control. Because I think we know right now, being where we are in the world, that we don't have a lot of control about anything except our own self, our own mind, our own emotions. You know, I think it's interesting that we're talking a lot about choice tonight, because choice has been taken away from us, right? In different parts of the country, Kathy and Gianna are in Illinois, and they're really sheltering in at a much different level than we are here. So the choice to do certain things are taken away from us. But we have choice on how we respond to what's happening and how we respond to the people in our lives. And so he also talks about this idea. I want to go back to this idea about don't be attached to the fruits, to actually be totally engaged. You know, really be engaged about thinking about what the choices you're making. Be engaged, fully engaged in the best way we can, especially now where we are, and then take a breath and kind of let it go. So we have to let that go. Let me see, I have some notes here. I want to make sure that I'm getting it. Yeah. Okay. So this is really important too. In these first 6 chapters, Krishna also introduces, in Jnana Yoga, he introduces meditation. And he says that meditation is actually part of karma yoga as well. It's an action. You choose to meditate. You're engaging your mind. And why he says meditation is so important is because your mind can be either your friend or your foe. So we can monitor, and I know most of you know that I'm such a big proponent of meditation. I've been teaching meditation. Anne's been to several of my classes on it. And so twofold on it. What I want to say for those of you who have a hard time sitting in meditation on the cushion is I'm going to challenge you to that, because why not? We're home. You know, why not try it? Put Insight Timer on and do a 5-minute meditation. Let all the thoughts arise and just notice what you're thinking about. One of the things that I've heard for years from my meditation students is, my mind is too busy, or my mind is so busy. And I want to challenge you in this way, because I want to say, everybody's mind is. Your mind is no different than anybody else's. It's not special. Everybody's mind is really busy, and we get and have the opportunity then to monitor the mind, to really befriend the mind and befriend those thoughts and those emotions. Let them rise up instead of stuffing them down. Let them rise up and let them just dissipate out, and just start to notice. Because I think the percentage now, and I don't know, it's going to be really interesting when we come out of this on the other end, but there's a certain percentage of thoughts that we tell ourselves. It's either 89 or close to 98 now. It's really bizarre. Are untrue. They're not based in reality or fact. So we just have this repeat hamster wheel going, and it's bullshit, basically. You know, it's a lot of BS that we tell ourselves, and we continue to just stuff in, you know, stuff that makes us ill, really. So monitor your thoughts, monitor what you're ingesting. And I challenge you, and if you come on next week, I'm going to ask you, did you do at least 3 days of a 5-minute meditation? So there's that. And then the other thing is, try and make everything a meditation. We're home. You know, we're in our house. We get to walk, we get to hike, we get to go out a little bit more here in Arizona. And so, and even in Illinois, you're out walking. Make that a meditation. When you're cooking those delicious meals, put that love in there. Because what Krishna tells Arjuna about the mind, and he literally says this, and I don't remember exactly which verse it is, but he says that when he's warning you about the mind and it being a friend or a foe, when it's a foe, it is taking us into fear. Some of the translations actually use that word. It takes us into fear. And we're in fear right now, or so many people are in fear right now. If we who are practicing meditators and practicing yoga, if we can counteract fear with love, then we can help dissipate this global fear that's happening right now and kind of pierce through some of this. So Krishna says the only way we get to do that, the only way that really works, is through the action, through meditation. So I offer that, you know, perhaps you have a mantra, perhaps you have a favorite prayer or favorite verse from a poem or a story, or simply I am love. And when you feel the anxiousness arising, when you feel the fear arising, when your partner starts to feel like, some of us are in partnership and we live with people. We live with those darn people, and they can really agitate us at times. And so when that starts to happen, can we soften our edges? Most of you know Anusara Yoga, first principle is open to grace. So I think first principle is set the foundation, right? Who knew that that would be such an important, we've known it was an important principle, but right now, I think it's the most important principle that we can stand on, open to grace. If we could soften our edges, soften our constriction, soften our breath, and open to the possibilities, we could soften and be in love when we get agitated. Maybe it's on the phone with a loved one. Maybe it's the person that's in our house with us. Whatever it is, if we could soften and meet them with love, we could start to counteract this. And that really is one of the biggest teachings I believe that Krishna is saying in this Gita, is that meditation is one of the biggest things that we could do, and doing our dharma. And when we can learn what that is, and it doesn't mean that it's, you know, we're CEOs of a corporation, maybe we are, but whatever we find ourselves in, do it well. Do it the most skillfully you can. And do it with this deeper level of awareness that our thoughts and our speech and our actions do have bigger implications. And it's so important right now as we're finding our way through this, whatever it is. I've even been challenging myself to stop calling it a pandemic. It's like, yeah, that's not just working for me anymore. Like, I don't want to continue to promote, and even just for myself, promote this idea of this global virus. Like, can we, I mean, I get it. I'm not discounting the importance of it and the importance of being smart and cautious and informed. but I'm trying to change the way I'm even speaking about it. Does that make sense? You know? So, and here's how I want to end before I open it up. He's saying practice, practice, practice. Monitor your mind so it doesn't, in my words, go down the rabbit hole. And what's really important is no matter how little of spiritual work you do or how big, it's all good. It's like nothing you do will be wasted. Like say you've done meditation for 2 or 3 days and then you forget. And then you're like, oh darn, I'm a bad meditator, it's not working, or I forgot to do it. Every little thing you do towards love is good, is a really good thing. And it helps on that level. So whatever it is that you feel you can contribute in the greater good on this battlefield that we're in right now, because it does feel like a battlefield in some ways, to neutralize this, to neutralize it within ourselves and help neutralize it in our loved ones, that will have more far-reaching implications. If we could stand for pure light and love, I believe it will have more far-reaching implications. And so make a commitment in however way you feel you can. So I want to do this. I am going to open it up and have commentary, but I want us to sit for a couple minutes while this is on our heart. So close your eyes, get comfortable. If you want to lay down, you can lay down, but just close your eyes again. And move from your head. There was a lot of talking and a lot of listening. So thank yourself for being a good student and for being here, a student of yoga, for someone who stands in yoga. Be in gratitude. Just say to yourself, I'm in gratitude for these sacred teachings that help stabilize and neutralize any fears or anxieties that arise. If you're sitting, feel your bottom, whatever's touching the earth. If you're sitting where your feet are on the floor, feel that. Feel a sense of groundedness. Notice your breath again. Just notice how when the breath enters in through your nostrils, you could draw it in all the way through your body. And how the exhale has a little bit more of an earthy feeling. Then bring your awareness into your heart center. And visualize your heart center any way that works for you. If there's a particular flower that you are aligned with that feels especially beautiful to you, just let it open. Feel into your heart center and the love that resides there, even if it's a little covered over right now, a little veiled. Just trust that love exists. Love exists here in the center of your heart, on the Zoom class, in each and every one of you. Love exists even in these troubling times. And may we all touch and tap into those higher vibrational places within us, those Krishna places. And that may we join together with Arjuna, our personality. May we sync them up. Just notice your breath again. Perhaps your breath is a little deeper or fuller. Maybe your body feels a little bit more heavy. Maybe it feels lighter. There's no right or wrong. It's simply being present to what is. And then I invite you to ask these questions of yourself. Am I doing my Dharma? Am I living from that place that is my purpose? Am I allowing anxiety or confusion or fear to cloud my higher self, my higher judgment? And then just plant that could percolate inside your heart center. And over the rest of the evening and the days ahead, just invite it to rise up and answer itself for you. Maybe you journal. Maybe when you walk, you get guidance. Just ask your inner wisdom to speak to you clearly. And then before we totally close, turn your hands in front of your heart center. And we'll close this part of it with an Om. Inhale fully. Om.